Welcome to our program today. I'm Tracy Richardson, and I'm the harpsichordist with Melamani. I'm also co-artistic director with Kim Rayleigh. Melamani has a new CD, A Hint of Light Remains, and its duos for flute and harpsichord. And we're here today to talk with composer Mark Haggerty about two of the pieces on our new CD. And the two pieces are Mark's Trefoil and The Four Gifts of God by our Brazilian friend, Sergio Roberto de Oliveira. Many of you knew Sergio, and he died prematurely of cancer about 3 years ago. It's a huge loss for us and for everyone who knew him. And it's a loss personally and musically. And so we have dedicated our new CD to him in his memory.
Well, I'm Kim Rayleigh, and I'm the flutist with Melamani, and as Tracy mentioned, co-artistic director. And of course, we're both very excited to talk about both Mark and Sergio's music. Mark and Sergio engaged in many collaborative projects over the course of time together and conversed for hours about music. And we've asked Mark to talk today about Sergio's music as well as his own. So by way of an introduction, Mark, you have written, this is wonderful, 14 pieces for the Melamani Ensemble to date. And we thank you for the newest edition, our duo, Trefoil. So maybe you can give us a little bit of a background on your relationship with Sergio and also our ensemble.
Well, thank you, Kim. It's really good to be here, and I'm so happy to be part of this project. Sergio was a resident of Rio de Janeiro, city he loved. He was one of Melamani's most important collaborators. He himself wrote 9 pieces for Melamani, and those included pieces for the whole ensemble, solo pieces, duos. He even wrote a piece that included the Philadelphia-based Brazilian duo, Minas. For me, Sergio was my musical brother. We did have a lot of conversations about music and other things, and we drank a lot of cachaça. And we did 2 CDs together that Sergio produced, and we had a wonderful 3rd CD planned, and that one wasn't to be. All this started in 2003 when Tracy and I traveled to Rio for a concert that she gave at Unirio, which is the Federal University of the state of Rio de Janeiro. She premiered Sergio's Suite for Solo Harpsichord and my Clavier Book 3. Sergio visited here many times. We saw him in Brazil many times. He attended lots of Melamani concerts, as he had reason to do, having been featured in many of them. And I think all of us became great friends.
Very true.
In 2014, Melamani traveled to Brazil. We were invited by Sergio, and we made many friends, and we remain friends with them now. Mark, you went along on that trip. Tell us about it.
Well, Sergio started and managed a contemporary music festival called Compositores de Hoje, Composers of Today, that was held in Rio. And he invited Melamani. They played in the historic Judicial Hall in downtown Rio, which is a gorgeous venue. They played to a full house. It was a wonderful evening. They played Sergio's Angico, as well as my Trois Rivières, or 3 Rivers, and new music by Ingrid Arauco, Roberto Pace, and Jennifer Margaret Barker.
And our duo CD, Sergio's piece, The Four Gifts of God, is, I believe, the only piece on the CD which is scored for Baroque flute and harpsichord, as opposed to the modern instrument, which offers us a wide array of colors and a sweetness and purity that instrument has, which I just love so much. And at the end of the first movement, one interesting note, which you'll actually hear on our program, first movement being called Breath, he asks me to create the sound of breathing at the end of the movement by breathing in and then breathing out through the instrument to give that really, it's really quite haunting programmatic effect. So Mark, maybe you could tell us a bit more about the Four Gifts of God.
Sure. Starting with the title, Sergio said he didn't have any specific religion or religious tenets in mind. Sergio was more spiritual than religious. The four movements are breath, light, creation, and action. Taken together, they're an extended meditation on creation itself, starting with the creation of humans, moving on to humans' creation and creation of art, to include art that reflects back on the creation of humanity. In the extended third movement, creation, he quotes seven composers: Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Schoenberg, Stravinsky, the Brazilian Villa-Lobos, and he threw me in there too.
Just as Sergio quotes Mark in his movement, Mark in his duo piece Trefoil quotes Sergio. Mark, let's change the conversation around to your new piece for alto, flute, and harpsichord, Trefoil.
So before you say anything about trefoil itself, Mark, I know for a fact you have a fascination with the alto flute, as do I, and I relish any moment and opportunity that I have to play the instrument. Just love the color and all of its possibilities, which I know you've explored in a number of pieces. So maybe you might reflect on what your fascination is with the instrument itself.
I'm happy to. Well, Kim, a lot of it has to do with working with you and the way you play the instrument. But, everybody likes the low, velvety, sensuous register, the alto flute, and that's really what the instrument is optimized for. That's the register that's peculiar to that instrument and that the standard flute can't reach. But what I've learned from working with you is that there are all these other aspects, including an upper register that's not used as much. It's not maybe optimized for standard music, but if you investigate it and you play loud and high and use different articulations, even some notes that are not quite in tune by to the structure of the instrument, you get a range of possibilities that, if you use them right, they're no longer just quirks, they're possibilities and building blocks.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about the instrument too. And in that way, it might be. I'd never thought about that this way before, but very similar in a way to the Baroque flute, in that its low register, as you suggest, has that just rich, beautiful, velvety sound. But in each of its registers, middle and then at the extreme upper register, each of those registers has their own special color as well, and it's really wonderful to exploit that. That's not something our modern instrument is built for. So our modern concert flute. So I've enjoyed exploring that with you and your music.
Well, and one of the things I appreciate about the way you play it is that you just go ahead and produce some whistling sounds and some harsh sounds, breathy noises, and even really primitive stuff that really no other instrument can provide.
Yeah. Keep writing for the alto flute.
My pleasure, believe me.
Well, Mark, I hope you'll tell us some more about Trefoil. And could I just add that in the first movement of Trefoil, which you're going to hear in our program, it's called Impulse. Well, of course, you'll hear the alto flute, as you know, but I think you treat in this movement the harpsichord as a percussion instrument. And I don't mean I'm hitting it or anything like that, but when I hear it, that's my impression. Mark, do you think that's true? And anyway, tell us about Trefoil.
Well, yeah, it probably is true. So first about the title, a trefoil is a plant with three leaves, or trifolium, clover, for example. By extension, it's a three-lobed opening in architecture, or an ornament, three-lobed ornament in architecture. And I guess by extension, again, it's a piece of three movements for alto, flute, and harpsichord. This project started about 6 years ago. I wrote a piece for Kim and Tracy called Context. And we knew at the time, even though it got played many times as a freestanding piece, that it really should be part of a larger piece. And we extended it, and Context is now the middle movement. The first movement, Impulse, as Tracy said, asks some different things from these instruments than you might ordinarily hear. There's some dark energy and some explosive rhythms, and sort of percussive effects. Very brief. And the alto gets up into its upper range and makes some really harsh noises, which are great. So Context is now the slow movement. That's a bit of a feel of a barcarolle or a boat ride, but it takes a very simple musical idea and repeats it over ever-changing musical contexts so that idea takes on new meanings over the course of the piece.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Then the last movement, Homage, is written to honor the memory of our friend Sergio Roberto de Oliveira. And it's based entirely on a short theme for flute in his Fantasia for solo flute. In his original, that theme gets a very serious, modern, very interesting, somewhat elaborate treatment. But the theme itself is kind of jazzy and kind of in a popular Brazilian, has kind of a popular Brazilian feel to it. So let's hear that theme right now.
You bet.
Thank you. So in Homage, I took the pitches, the notes of that theme and rearranged them melodically and harmonically, and I took little bits of that theme and made them into motifs or building blocks. But again, everything in that movement comes directly out of Sergio's theme. And then about halfway through the movement, we actually hear the theme quoted directly. And so we take a little bit more of a Brazilian pop direction with it, and it gets some samba rhythms and it gets a little bit of jazz infused harmony, which is kind of what happens in bossa nova. And those rhythms are very peculiar to Brazil and maybe a little hard to play.
Maybe for us classically trained musicians. I remember when we visited Brazil and we were playing a beautiful Brazilian melody that Sergio had arranged for us, and we were rehearsing it, and I was feeling pretty groovy about it. And then one of the Brazilian musicians said, "No," and then corrected us a bit. It was wonderful, and I thought, "Oh, well, there you go. It's something that you can feel it in the blood."
It is hard, but you guys nailed it, and so we do get that lilt, that little bit of a feeling of Rio. But the overall feeling of the movement, despite all that, is one of that can be covered by the Portuguese word saudades. It's kind of a special word in their language that refers to a melancholy longing for a thing, or more likely a person who is absent. And yet, despite that, we wanted to end on an upbeat note. So it does end with positive, upbeat energy that reflects on the amazing energy that Sergio had and the lasting impact that he had on all of us who were lucky enough to know him and work with him.
Thanks so much for talking with us today, and not only about your music, but also about Sergio's. It's greatly appreciated, and we're very fortunate to be able to perform that on our new CDs.
Thank you.
And Mark, would you let us sign off with the dedication to our friend?
Saudades, querido amigo.